In this video, I'm going to show you how I made this super cool floating TV stand. No legs. All for around $100. Alrighty guys, to start, I'm going to take 3 of these 4x4s. They're not pressure treated or anything. I want my floating TV console to be about 6 foot long. So I'm going to cut these down to about 74 inches. Just to leave them a little long, so then I can cut the miters on them later. You're going to want to set aside your cutoffs too, because we're going to be using them. Now what we're going to want to do is take these rounded edges off. We really want to square these up, so it's going to be a lot cleaner look in the end without these rounded edges it comes with right from the big box store. Okay, so to knock the soft edges off of this, I'm going to raise my blade up to about 2 inches, and these are about 3.5 inches. So I want to take about 1/4 inch off. You can usually go a little less, maybe 3/16, but to make it easy, I'm going to first set my fence to 3 1/4, run them all through. Okay, now we're going to want to take those same 3 boards. So the side we cut will be up against the fence this time. And then I'm going to change my fence to 3 inches. And then run them through this way to take this curved edge off. Okay, so now with one more 8-foot 4x4, we're going to cut 5 pieces at 19 inches. Okay, so now with these 5 pieces, plus the 3 pieces that we cut from these, we're going to do the same thing on the table saw to bring them to the 3 inches. Okay, so I'm going to start with putting the 2 sides of the TV console together. What I'm going to do is run mine through my jointer, just so it's a lot cleaner and comes together a lot better. But these come planed right from the store. They're not the best, but you could get by with just gluing it like this. The finished product, you might have some gaps to fill, but if you don't have a joiner, you don't have a choice. But I'm gonna run mine through just to clean it up, so these will come together like that a lot better. Alrighty guys, so as you can see, these have been ran through the joiner, and it just makes them come together a little cleaner. Okay, so now next up, we have to cut the miters on these. So to come up with what length you want to make yours, I'm going to take 2 of my long pieces, and depending on what you want to fit in between, you're going to want to measure that to make sure it's going to fit in here. I don't have much that's going to go in here, and I kind of want a narrow look to mine. So I might do about 9 inches in between, which would bring me to cut those miters to 15 inches. So right here you can kind of just visualize and play around with what width you want. Okay, and then once you get them together like this, you're going to want to glue them up. I'm going to use my domino just to keep the alignment good. You absolutely don't have to have it. If you have a biscuit joiner, you can use that. If you have nothing at all, just clamps and wood glue, you can use that. Alright, now these next cuts is going to be the length of your TV stand. So I was originally going to do 72 inches, and I just went in and remeasured, and I think I'm going to knock it down to 66 inches because it'll be a little more fitting where I'm going to put it. So whatever you want the length of yours, just make sure when you're cutting these miters, outside to the outside is what it's going to be. Once I got the stop block there, push it up against that and make this cut. And I'm going to do this on all 3 of the 4x4s I have cut to this. Okay, now with the 4x4s cut, you're going to take just a regular 2x4 and do the same thing on that. Okay, so our final two cuts are gonna be two 2x8s. Point of the 2x4 material and 2x8 material is to just save on weight, because this is gonna be a floating TV console, so it is gonna sit on the wall. So you don't want it to be too crazy heavy. So now with these cutting the 2x8s is gonna be just a little different because we can't do it on the miter saw. So I'm gonna set up to do it on the table saw. All right, for this I'm gonna wanna set my blade to 45 degrees. So I'm gonna raise it up all the way. And then I'm gonna use this to just make sure it's as close to 45 as possible. I don't trust the gauge on my saw, so I just double check to make sure that is about perfect. So I lock it in to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Alrighty guys, so on the 4x4, that's gonna be on top. On the back, we're gonna wanna do something on the table saw. So when we go to hang this, as I've said, it's gonna be a floating TV console, and we're gonna hang it with a French cleat. What we wanna do is make a 45 cut here like this, and then a straight cut down like that. All this is gonna come out. This will all be hidden when it's all put together. It'll all make sense in the end, I promise. Okay, so now you'll be able to better see what I was talking about. So now this piece here gets mounted on the wall this way. Then once it's all done, this will fit right over it and hang on the wall. It's super strong. It's literally what I've done my whole shop in. All my tool organizers and everything, they're all with French cleats. I'm gonna take 2x8. That's gonna be in the center like this. Then I'm gonna take one more 4x4. That's going to be the front. So it's going to go together like that. Okay, so now I'm going to go about gluing up the bottom. So that 1x8 is going to go there. Or 2x8, I mean. This 2x4 is going to go here. Remember when you're cutting these bottom pieces, this bottom 2x8 and this bottom 2x4, make sure you're cutting it from the inside of the 45. Earlier, I was gonna cut it to the outside to match these, but it's gotta be on the inside because all this down here is gonna be hidden. This is to save weight. That's why we're using 2x material. So the side 4x4 is gonna come down and hide all this. And when it's installed on the wall, you're never gonna be able to see this. So just make sure when you're cutting these two, you cut it to the inner 45 when you're measuring. Alrighty guys, I got all 4 parts glued up. They sat overnight. I got the bottom set up on some sawhorses. Now it's time to bring all 4 of these parts together and glue them up. This is not the easiest glue up, as it's 4 miter joints coming together. I got some ratchet straps here that I'm gonna try gluing all 4 up at once. Oh, I also did cut dominoes in on the 45s just to help with alignment. If you guys don't have a Festool domino, you might have to mock it all up with glue and then maybe add some sort of decorative lag bolts in to your style, just to, because miter joints are gonna need reinforcement. You can't just glue them up. Alrighty, I don't know if you could tell through the time lapse, but that was quite a struggle to glue up. But all in all, the front miters, which was my main concern, this is probably the worst one, and that can easily be filled. The rest of them went together pretty damn good. So with a combination of the 3 ratchet straps, and I used 4 pipe clamps, this one went across because I didn't have any long enough. I had to put 2 of them together. But I think this is really gonna look good in the spot I'm gonna put it. So while that dries, I gotta move on to this thing, which was actually the inspiration behind the stand I'm doing. This is going to be a bathroom vanity that I made out of hand-hewn beams. And that went together a lot like that one. So, but as you can see, I gotta polish the epoxy next just to get a few dust nibs out of it, but that's what I'm gonna do now while that dries, and then we'll move back to this tomorrow. Alrighty guys, now it's all together, so what I'm going to do now is just go over it all with 80 grit sandpaper to get rid of the dry glue and all that. Then I'm going to do some distressing on it just to kind of give it a barnwood look, a little more rustic approach to it. Alrighty guys, I touched up a couple of the miters that needed to be filled a little bit. I'm just going to give it a couple of just slight imperfections just to kind of give it a little bit of character. I'm gonna screw some screws in and out just to give it a couple like nail holes. I'm gonna take my Sawzall and just give it a couple little saw marks. Alrighty guys, now at this point, before my final sanding, I'm going to stain it. But first I'm going to put on this pre-stain conditioner. I don't want this to be too dark, and this will help it not be blotchy, and it'll also help not as much soak in, so it won't be as dark. And that's another reason I'm doing this before my final sanding, is because I want to sand off a lot of it just to give it that worn look. You'll see what I mean when I start doing it, but I'm going to put this on first. Alright, and right after that, I'm going to immediately put on some special walnut stain. Really lightly put it on. So all I want it is to give it kind of a natural wood color, and there's a little bit of color in the natural pine. The 4x4s are a lot redder than the 2x8. So I kind of want to blend that, but I do not want to give it that deeply stained, saturated look. Then another thing this is doing is kind of darkening up the little saw blade marks where I ran my table saw. And this is kind of giving it exactly the look I want. Alright, now I'm just going to give it a really light sanding with 240 grit. And I'm going to pay more attention to the edges just to kind of give it a worn look. Alrighty guys, so as far as finishing goes, I'm going to use this polyacrylic. It's a semi-gloss. And I'm going to just spray it with my Graco 360 VSP. I'm just going to be using this because this is just what I had laying around.